Okay, hi guys. I see we got the guys on already. Welcome. This is my first ever live stream. Never done one of these before. I've been sort of told to do some of these now, just so that we can answer some questions. I've been given some advice by other YouTubers. They tell me these work pretty well, so I'm going to try and do them best of my ability. I'm not normally a guy who's good in front of cameras. I'm normally good, behind writing rather than being in front of the cameras. But I'll do my best to answer some questions. If there are any questions, feel free to put them into the chat on the side there, and I'll have a look at them. And I'll definitely get to some of them. I see we've already got one from Francois Smith. Thanks, Francois, for the question, for being the first guy to give me a question on the live chat. As I say, I've never done these before. So, we're going to try and do them to the best of our ability. So, what does the future Springbok backline look like? Well, there's so many factors that could probably go into a question like that. How many players are going to make it? How many players from this World Cup squad will still make it to the next World Cup? I don't have all the ages with me at the moment, but I would say a player like Rue is probably not going to make it to the next World Cup. I don't think that's fine. Jesse Kriel, I'd probably say won't make it to the next World Cup. I don't think there's any reason why Curtly Arends or Chesney Colby could not make it. Makazole might not make it either. So then you look at it as well. Andre Pollard might be touch and go. Kobus Reinigs on the wrong side of 30. Faf might be touch and go. But a lot of these things really depend on what happens in the next season or two. So depending on how many of those guys stay, you want to replace them with some really good youngsters. And I think we've already seen that. Grant Williams is the first guy to come through. I'd say he's in the driving seat at the moment. We've got some good youngsters coming through. Iman Khan, who at Western Province, is very good as well. Imrose Papi is probably getting a bit long in the tooth. So by the time the next World Cup rolls around, but he'll still be around as well. I think if we look as well, the likes of Sasha's obviously going to be there at 10, and he's the perfect one. Damon Willemse will still be around. He's only 26, so he can also play in that back line. Marnie Lebok is probably still all right to go there as well. So at 10, there's some options there. There's some good youngsters coming through. I think of Franco Smith's one son who's at the Sharks. And I think of what's his name, Yuri, the province, the young Stormers fly-off as well coming through. So there are some good fly-offs coming through. So there's definitely some talent. In the midfield, I think we might have a look at somebody. Ethan Hooker is obviously the one guy. Jerenza Jury's at the Sharks. Those two are really prominent at the moment. They really look like they could, be the next, well, if not at the next World Cup, probably close to there as well. They could be the next centre combination. And then you're probably looking at someone like Suleiman Hartzenberg as well. I think he could be there as well. Kieran Horn is still very young as well. He'd also come through at that stage. So I think there's a lot of good youngsters coming through. I mean, I think we're going to watch the junior box and the under-18 series that's happening now. And we'll pick up a couple more names as well. But a lot can happen. Players can fall away. Players can come through. So it's very much, sort of the guys who sort of take their chances at the moment. Okay. Gradwell, you ask any news on Ulrich Jager's return, and will Franco Mostert be back for the games against the All Blacks? Franco Mostert broke his leg, so that's the first thing. He's not going to be back for, I think they said 6 months. Could anywhere to 4 to 6 months. I'm no doctor, so don't take my medical analysis on this one. But he is going to be out for quite some while, so he's not going to be back for the All Blacks. I'd be very surprised if he is. A broken leg is quite a serious thing. And Loerde Jager there was an article the other day where he spoke to, I think it was one of the guys at The Verdict, John and them, where he said he tore his shoulder, so he's going to be out for another 6 months. So I don't expect him to be back even for the November tests. So probably only next year. And you're going to start wondering, with all these injuries, will Lewis make it back? He's one of my favorite players. I really enjoy him. He's a no-nonsense, straight-talking guy. And I quite enjoy him. So I'd really love to see him back, but it doesn't seem like he's going to be back still this year. Tyron, thanks for the compliment. I'm glad you enjoy the channel. How are the young tight five going this weekend? Geez, that's a good one. I'm hoping very well. I'm a bit worried about Jan Hendrik Wessels, mainly because he hasn't spent that much time at this top level at Lucet, and the Wallabies are hurting, so they're going to come for the box. Not saying that their scrum is that strong. If it was Oxen and Malcolm and Vincent Koch, who's on the bench, I wouldn't have any worries at all. But Jan Hendrik, the thing that worries me, not that he's not talented, is he's very young and he hasn't had much time scrumming as well. He has been working with Don Himon, and that gives me some sort of, I suppose, peace in the manner that Don really prepares his props well. And the Boks have live scrums as well, so that goes pretty well. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, if Don and them say he's ready, I suppose the proof is in the pudding. We'll know. Alan Alato is not the world's best scrummer, but he is somebody who's pretty decent. And at this level, you only need 1 or 2% over your opposition to take control. I think the fact that him and Johan Krobler have played together before, but they're both still very young, and hopefully that scrum stands up well. It's a very young tight five, and I think that's the other worry. All of them are extremely talented players, and they all can do pretty well. But I suppose that's the thing. You've got to give them a chance to swim at some point, and that is, that's the big thing as well. So let's see. Okay, the Jan Hendrik situation, Bulls versus Boks, playing 1 or 2. How does Russie and Jake handle that? Well, we spoke about it a bit on the podcast as well. If you haven't seen our podcast, To the Last Drop is with Liam Del Carmen and me. We bring it out every Thursday. It's out this morning. It's on the channel at the moment. We had Kobani Bobo on as our guest today, and he said as well, they've got to sort out the situation. I think one of the things as well is, I don't know if Jake really knows where he wants to use him. He obviously looks at him more as a hooker. Russie's almost made it quite a bold statement by selecting him at Lucet prop, and it almost seems like that's where his future is going to be long term. It's difficult. The Bulls have got Gerrit Stenenkamp as well. There is probably a spot as the second Lucet prop at the Bulls that's not really taken at the moment. Dylan Smith's been playing there. I'm trying to think who else. Mpiwe Matanzima. Jan Hendrik Wessels can certainly compete with those guys. At hooker, they've got Akka van der Merwe and Johan Krobler. I think he's going to struggle to get good game time with those two hookers around. So I think a Lucet prop. But I think, and the Boks have sort of made it clear about selecting him as a Lucet prop. That's where they see where his future is. So it's going to be interesting to see what they say going forward as well. But hopefully there's some sort of compromise and everybody gets on the same page, because I think for the youngsters' future, and I've written something on Supersport's website today, it really needs to happen. Okay, let's see. Which of the returning Boks are probably joining the team? Stephen Kitshoff's playing for Western Province this weekend, I believe. So I think he'll be back in the squad next week. I'm trying to think there's 8 of them in total. Lurt won't be back. Damon Willemse, don't think will be back. Faf should be back. He's the one. I'm trying to think who else there is. Geez, on the top of my mind, I don't have my paper in front of me. But I know those two should definitely be back as well. Jasper Visser will also be back at the Boks as well. His suspension's ended. Andre Esthuizen will, of course, be back as well. So those are the 4 that, off the top of my head, I can remember. To me, I think the squad will only be stronger. I think the guy I need to find out, and just as I say, talking off the top of my head here, the guy I need to find out more about where he is in his recovery is Cameron Honeycomb, because I'm not quite sure how he's going to get into the squad at the moment. He certainly was there and thereabouts when the URC was ending. Then he picked up the hamstring injury. It was supposed to be 6 weeks. That's about 6 weeks ago now. So it'd be interesting to see. He's not in the Bulls team, but I'll make some inquiries and find out where he is exactly now as well. Emil, we have a Kiwi ref this weekend. Thoughts on how his style differs from Luke Pierce? Geez, I haven't studied the ref that much. I think all you really the box would have. What I can say is the box would have studied the refs. Yaku Papers there. He knows them intimately well. He spent World Cups with these guys. And my interactions with the refs along the years, they all know each other's strengths and weaknesses. They know, they sit around. I've sat around in bars on being been in a hotel bar on a Friday night in Bloemfontein, for instance, where a bunch of refs were around and they were watching a Friday night game and almost critiquing their colleague on screen. So they all know each other, and that's why I say Jaco Paper's got a very intimate knowledge. He knows what the trigger points are. He knows what pitches they need to give to them as well. And I think he'll definitely have a lot of info for the box. I think the whole thing is you've got to be adaptable. The refs are there. Every ref's going to have his own little quirks and little things that he concentrates on. But I think the box have to adapt, and they've been pretty good with that as well. So I've got no fear that Jaco Paper won't be able to give them some insights there. Okay, sorry, it's talking so much. Any realistic chance New Zealand lose this weekend? Are New Zealand supporters doom and gloom comments justified? Well, I think the honeymoon's over for Scott Robertson. I think Argentina were always in a good position. They've got the game plan to beat New Zealand. They've done it twice in the last 4 years away from home. They're still going to beat them at home, which hasn't come for them yet. But there has been a bit of there have been some sort of chinks in the All Blacks armour that we saw the England game. Philippe Contepomi is an exceptional coach, a very detailed coach as well. Anybody who's worked with Leinster will tell you just how much detail he goes into. And he would have picked up that. And you must never get away from that spirit of the Pumas pack as well. And they did exceptionally well. Can they do it 2 weeks in a row? Well, that's their challenge. Last time the All Blacks lost in Eden Park was 1994. So I think everything points to an All Black victory this weekend. But you got to love the underdog. Okay, let's see. If Rassie sees Sasha playing at 10 at the box, where do you think he should be playing in the Stormers with Marnie? I think that's John Dobson's headache. And having spoken to Dobbo, I suppose it depends, one, on the form of the players, where they are, if there's injuries, and where they are in their sort of development. And the other one, it sort of looks like it would be who the opposition is. Certainly, you need to find a place for all three of them to play regularly, and that's difficult for the Stormers. I'd like to see Sasha playing at 10 more, but how do you do that with Marnie? Luckily, the URC is a long competition, and there's European Cup or Investec Cup, Champions Cup. There are moments that you can give them both decent, good game time, but Sasha needs to play. I think we all know that, we all see that, and Marnie needs his confidence, so he needs to get enough game time to play and have confidence as well. Okay, the All Black forward pack was underwhelming. Do you think Rassie should go to the 7-1 split against them? Well, I wouldn't be surprised. They did it at Twickenham, just before the World Cup. World Cup final is always a leveler. It's always going to be a close game. But I think the Bok forwards will probably look at going a 7-1. If not, they'll definitely go 6-2. Can't see them going a 5-3 against the All Blacks. Of course, at Ellis Park tends to favour the All Blacks as well. So that should be an interesting one game as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if they do. Gradwell, let's see. By making such a lot of chop and changes for the starting 15, isn't it a bit risky to get lost this weekend, or are they building depth for the future? Well, they're definitely building depth. There's always a risk when you make changes. There's always a risk that you're not going to have the continuity. We saw it in 2022 when they played Wales. There's always that risk that you're going to have, that sort of, you're going to start slowly and give the opposition some sort of advantage. Australia are hurting, and they're going to come back strongly this weekend. How long that will last, how much they'll be able to do against the Springboks is going to be interesting. But they'll definitely be hurting. They'll definitely be looking for a way to hit the box early. They've made a couple of changes. Nick White, Marika Koreabete, guys that have really got experience, and they're going to try and exploit the box inexperience in that as well. So we'll see that happen. But you've got to, at some point, you've got to give guys confidence to play. I think the way Rassie and them look at it is that after this weekend, even if they do lose, which I'm not sure they will, even if they do lose, they'll be on 5 points. The All Blacks, if they win, will be on 5 points, and everybody will basically be on 5 points. So then you back yourself to go back home and beat the All Blacks in 2 tests. And knowing that if you do that, you've got 2 tests against Argentina, which traditionally the Boks have done pretty well, to clinch the Rugby Championship. Of course, it is a risk, but if you do win this weekend, then you're in the driving seat going in against the All Blacks. And you know that even if you win one of those 2 games, you should be able to clinch the Rugby Championship. So I think it's a calculated risk. I'm not too worried. You've got to give these guys a chance to play, and they'll back them. And this team's probably been training together for 2-3 weeks already, knowing the way the Boks work. So that should be interesting. Geez, I see 15 minutes already gone by. Okay, guys, let's see. Tyron, how do you see the backline looking the second half? I think what we probably see, depending on how the game goes, I think we'll see Marnie coming on at 10, probably Andre at 12, I would say. I think Grant Williams, they prefer to only use him as a scrum half if they have to, depending on what happens in the game, of course. But I see we could see Marnie at 10 and Andre at 12. I wouldn't put Marnie at fullback. He's traditionally struggled at fullback. So, that should be interesting. Could Moody be a possible option at 12? Sorry, that's the one guy who will be back in the squad next week as well. Somebody asked me a bit earlier. That's the one guy who should also be, because could he be an option at 12? Yeah, I don't know. I think he's more 13, 14 for me. I'm not sure he's going to pick up. He's a very string bean type guy. I'm trying to think of a good word for this now. But the way he's built, he's never going to be a David Delenda with all the weight on him. And I think if he does, he'll lose speed. So I wouldn't see him as 12. I'd probably see him as 13 and a lot more as well. And he's definitely a baller. Contender, is the downfall in Australian rugby as a result of an exodus of versatile players? I think the problem with Australian rugby for a long time, they've tried to look for short-term solutions. They had a very good coach in Dave Rennie. They had a very good coach. What is the other New Zealander? Got his picture in my head. Robbie Deans. They had a very good coach in Robbie Deans as well. And they've still got rid of them because they weren't playing an Australian way. Now, the results haven't always come with Australia. They don't have that much depth. They try to create too much depth too quickly with the Force and the Rebels, and now we've seen that the Rebels have shut down. They've been trying to get out of South Africa, out of Super Rugby for so long. And when South Africa left, I think they missed that physicality as well. They get routinely beaten by the New Zealand sides, other than the Brumbies. So that happens quite often. And I think, to me, the whole thing is, when I say they try short-term solutions, they're competing with other sporting codes. So they're always looking for that superstar to come in, and they don't develop players very well. Of course, Eddie came in and tried something and was a bit disastrous. I don't think he was totally on the wrong route, but the way he tried it was difficult, and probably his timing was wrong. I don't know. I don't know how they've certainly got enough talent in that country. When they get a team together that plays well, they've won 2 World Cups, so they're pretty decent when they get that together. But the problem is they're looking for short-term solutions. And Joe Schmidt's not a short-term guy; he's a long-term guy. He'll look for long-term solutions as well. So I see that's what I reckon they'll be looking for in the next couple of years. Of course, they've got the Lions next year. I don't think at the moment they're going to trouble the Lions. I see the Lions sweeping that Test series. But I think they could, by 2027, if they keep on the same path with Joe Schmidt, they could be a much more of a force. Of course, you just need a couple of things to go your way as well, and you need a couple of players to hit form at the same time. But at the moment, I don't know. I don't know enough about Australian rugby to know exactly if there's other problems. There's been a lot of infighting in Australian rugby over the last couple of years, and probably not managed as well as they could have been. But I'm going off media reports that I've read as well. Yeah, guys, that looks like it's more or less it. There's no more questions. Oh, well, here comes the last one from Gradwell. Should the All Black supporters be worried? Gradwell, are you an All Black supporter? I think All Black supporters should always be worried. Let's see if they had a dip with Foster. Another very good. Look, they're a good team, and the All Blacks are always going to be one of the top 3-4 teams in the world. I can't ever see them dropping below that. They miss the physicality from South Africa. That's why we're seeing all this talk of tours resuming between the two sides. That's something I'm really looking forward to, is that the tours resume between South Africa and New Zealand, old school long tours. But I think they miss the physicality. They miss South African Super Rugby. Ian Foster was perhaps unfairly, because he's not a bad coach, was perhaps unfairly cited because they had a bunch of players go overseas. And sometimes you take a dip. You get players who retire, and I think the loss of Brody Retallick, Sam Whitelock, those are difficult players to replace at any time, not just after a World Cup. So they're lucky they've still got the Barrett brothers, and while they're still there, they'll still do well. But I think there is a bit of a worry that if they don't get consistent competition of a high level and the physicality that the South African sides bring, they could fall away. We've seen South Africa's move to Europe has been very beneficial, especially for the Northern Hemisphere sides. The Irish guys, when you speak to them, they talk about the physicality of the South African teams being something that they've missed before in the Northern Hemisphere. Could Fossey jam 11 this weekend? I take it you mean could he play 11 this weekend? I'm sure he could. I'm not sure he will get there, depending on what happens in the game. I wouldn't think they would move him there, but that's just I'm not sure. I'm not in Australia, so it's a bit difficult to always, what's going on when you're not that close to the team. When you're with a team as well, then it's a lot easier. Stephen, catching up from the start, how do you see this different when WWR make wholesale changes against Wales a few years ago and lost? Okay, I understand. Sorry, it took me a little while. I think you're talking about when Jacques Nienaber did. I think there was a lot more rushed. I think they thought that this is the only test they can really make all these changes. Again, in Bloemfontein to blood a bunch of players. They lost a year with COVID, and they lost a year with the Lions to blood players. So I think it felt like a lot more of a rush. This time, South African rugby feels like it's got a lot more depth, and it doesn't feel like these players are being thrown in the deep end. That's the pretty simple answer. Could we see Cameron Honeycomb featuring in the championship? Tyron, I think I sort of answered this a bit earlier, where I said I'm not sure where he is at the moment, but I struggle. He won't come into the side for the All Black tests. So that to me would be the first point. I would expect Jasper Visser to play 8th there. I think Kwacha would be the other guy in the squad there. I think Ulrich will probably go back to the Bulls for a couple of games. And then after that, the 2 games against Argentina, it depends what Russie's plans are, and it depends how fit he is. I see him probably more of a bet at the moment for the end of the year tour. But if he is fit, there is a chance of him coming in. Russie hasn't mentioned him, so we're not quite sure. But it should be interesting to see what happens. Guys, I think that I'm going to leave it there. That's 23, 24 minutes. I'll do a lot more of these. If you feel it works, leave some comments below. I'm going to try and do more of these. As I said, this is the first one, and if it works and you enjoy them, I'll do them a lot more. But yeah, thanks for joining. It's been great to have you guys on. Chat to you guys soon.